Hi, I'm Hazel. It's almost Saturday today, which makes it time to sit down and catch up on the WoW news of the week, what I've been up to, and answer some of your questions. This week, a surprising announcement came out in a blue post regarding the Caravan Brutosaur Auctioneer mount. If you're out of the loop, this is a mount you can purchase off a BFA vendor currently. It costs 5 million gold, but has an Auctioneer NPC on the side of it, so you can pull up an auction house wherever you like. In a blue post, Blizzard has confirmed that in Shadowlands, that mount will be removed from its vendor and instead added to the black market auction house. It's not exactly being removed, but they're going to become much harder to get and will most likely be far more expensive. There are a couple of reasons why they could have done this, and I've had to really sit and think to figure out a few theories because at face value, this is a move that is guaranteed to upset a lot of people and doesn't look good, so let's brainstorm why they might have done this. First theory that's been flying around a lot online is that they are trying to push token sales. With a new deadline of about a year left to earn 5 million gold to buy a mount, some people may feel pressured to purchase WoW tokens instead and get the mount that way before it becomes much harder to obtain. So one point that is potentially in favor of this theory is that they could, I suppose, be trying to drive the gold price of the token back down. Right now, there is a lot of demand to buy tokens with gold because you have people trying to pay for like a classic sub and they don't want to pay for it with money, so that imbalance has caused the token price to rise quite a bit ever since Classic came out. And theoretically, if you get a whole bunch more people to buy tokens with gold, that will drive the price back down, making it easier for people to pay for their subs, and also, just makes money. They make money on every token sold. So that's a theory. I don't personally feel, and this is just my imagination, I have no idea what's actually happened, but I don't really think that the people making this decision are the same ones that would be pressuring for like a bigger quarter four or bigger bottom line, and I feel like the people that are pushing for those things are not necessarily in touch with whether or not a particular gold sync mount is on a vendor or not. So I don't like that theory, but it is possible. Second theory is that they plan to add a new gold sync mount with auctioneer functionality in Shadowlands. It just looks different. It's important to note that there is no evidence to suggest this. This is just a theory that's been flying around of, well, maybe they're going to make a new one and they want to reduce the availability of this one to keep the appearance unique, but they're planning on offering a new one. Possible, but I would not bank on it just because we have no reason to believe that's true. There's no precedent for that. Like, they never removed the Expedition Yak and then added a different transmog vendor mount. It's just been the same one for the same price. But, none of this has a precedent. They've never removed a vendor mount that was previously up for gold before. So the third theory, and the one that I think I'm going to believe, is that with gold inflation coming in Shadowlands. Like, in Shadowlands, you will be most likely earning more gold. There will be more gold entering the economy from quest rewards and other baseline gold sources. With that inflation, over time, it will become easier to potentially purchase that mount. Like, back in Wrath of the Lich King, the Traveler's Tundra Mammoth for 10 to 12k gold was, like, really expensive and not very many people had one. So nobody really expected to have a repair mount. But these days, 10k is something you can do in a weekend, or like a weekend morning breakfast over your coffee. So almost everybody has access to a repair vendor mount, and they kind of expect that at this point. So I feel like maybe they are being cautious about driving into a future where everybody expects for at least their guild or their group to have an auction house mount in raid, if not themselves. Like right now, if you wanted retransmog in a raid, you can fairly reliably just ask for a mount and somebody's probably going to have one. And I think they may just be trying to, they've added a really good utility into the game, and with any addition there's a downside. There's kind of an eroding of the fundamental way the RPG works. That's the whole reason why people think Classic is so magical and why it kind of is. Over time, the Brutosaur convenience would become more and more widespread, and I think they're trying to limit that before it becomes too easy to get. That's not really me defending the decision, that's just what I think is the most likely logic, and I hope I explained it well enough to make sense. Other news this week from the 8.3 PTR, Volpera have received a racial swap. So on the PTR, they used to have a racial where they would get satchels of trade goods from humanoid mobs when they killed them, or hilariously from your raid mates as they died around you, because that counted. And that racial has been removed. They're not doing it. Instead, they have added a different one where Volpera just get a flat 8 extra bag slots. And if you ask me, this is a major downgrade because in modern WoW, we have access to so many bag slots. You have 120, 40, 50 empty bag slots if you clean out your bags. What's another 8 slots going to do to your life? Whereas the other one could potentially have been quite good for making gold or for crafting, or especially early when there's competition for mats. I don't think it's as good, but there may have been some issues with getting the bags to work. I know they were certainly a little iffy on the PTR, so there's probably a good reason. Other controversial news of the week, it was a big week for that. The last 2 bosses of the Nyalotha raid, so the 2 N'Zoth encounters, are confirmed to drop loot that is 10 item levels higher than the rest of the loot in the raid, and therefore kind of the game at the very cutting edge. This means that if you want 485 gear in 8.3, the only place to get that will be Mythic Carapace and Madness of N'Zoth. You will not be able to get loot of that item level from Mythic Plus or from anything else, particularly because there's no more Titan Forging, replacing that with Corruption for now. So on paper, this is wildly unfair to Mythic Plus players that have always been promised that Mythic Plus would be an alternate route to raiding and would be kind of like parallel, like you could get gear from either. So the fact that the best gear is now from a raid feels unfair to those people. It also feels unfair to anybody whose best loot is not from the last 2 bosses. Like if your best Azurite pieces are not from those last 2 bosses, then yours will not be as high of an item level as somebody's whose is. So on paper, I totally understand why people are upset, and it does feel a little bit unfair, but I also kind of get it. A 10 item level difference in a couple of slots should not really change your life. That should be kind of a 1 to 2, maybe 3% upgrade in the power of your character, which, you know, you can probably, and I'm not talking about cutting edge mythic play here, I'm talking about, you know, the 95% below that. If you just like sit up a little straighter and take a few deep breaths, you can probably do 3% more damage just by playing a little better. So I don't think that for most people it's going to make a huge difference. And then I think the benefit of having those last 2 bosses drop slightly better loot is it incentivizes finishing the raid and then continuing to re-clear the raid. For the last couple of tiers, my guild at least has ended up in a position where we full clear at least once on heroic for the sake of the achievement. And then everybody kind of has better gear. Like in this last year, everybody had better gear than the Ashara gear for the most part, already from Mythic Plus or from earlier in the raid. So when it came to Farm Night, nobody really wanted to struggle through that last boss all over again. And if the very best loot in the game comes from those very hardest last best fights of the whole expansion, that makes a little bit more sense, and it also provides a reason to finish the raid and to struggle through it and to farm it, whereas before it felt kind of weird to just do it once and then be like, yeah, this isn't worth it anymore. Like this very final boss is actually like not worth it to do. So I think that this difference is just to kind of mitigate that. Just my opinion though. This week, they also dropped the new Guild Finder. This had actually been in the file since 8.2.5, but they just decided to enable it now. And my favorite thing about the new Guild Finder is that you can window shop for guild while you are in one. Previously, the Guild Finder occupied the guild interface, so if you were in a guild, you would see your guild, and if you weren't, you could look for one. But now, because it's in a separate window, you can be in a guild and still browse through other guilds. So if your guild's just like really not working out for you, or they're just getting on your nerves one raid night, you can make yourself feel better by window shopping. It's a weird thing, but it's there. I haven't looked too much into how this differs otherwise from the old Guild Finder, but hopefully it will help more people find groups, because I've heard from quite a few people that really do want to raid in 8.3 and Shadowlands, but due to player migration from Classic haven't been able to keep a group, so hopefully the people find the homes. And questions from this week. Oopie asks, what microphone are you using? This is my Rode NT1A. Leonard asks, what kind of cat do you have? I have no pets of my own, was thinking of getting a Burmese cat. What do you think about a Burmese cat when it comes to breeding? I don't know anything about cat breeding. Around here, at least, there are so many cats in shelters that I don't know many people that are buying like purebred cats of any particular kind. So this cat, who is off camera, let's see if we can stretch far enough back so you can see like a little bit of it. Kira is a domestic short hair, which is fancy speak for a regular cat. She was a shelter kitten, and the way we chose her was we went to the shelter, we met with different kittens, and this one, they had like this little room where you could take the cat out of their enclosure and meet them and hang out for a bit, and she immediately climbed into my lap and then passed out in my lap when I first met her. So I think that with cats in particular, while their breed may influence their traits somewhat, most cats seem to have a personality that is very distinct and specific to that cat. So I think more important than finding the right breed of cat is finding the right cat that you're going to get along with by visiting cats that are looking for homes and then seeing who you get along with. And Billy asks, along with a few other people with similar questions, wait, so if you didn't have a license up until now, how were you getting around? And the answer to that one is I wasn't. I really am a WoW hermit. I go outside to walk my dog, And then maybe on a weekend, my husband and I might go out to like a garden center or something. Or now that I'm learning to drive, we're going out to get driving practice. But aside from that, I really have no social life or house leaving at all. If I ever seem a little wacky, it's because I spend all of my time like right here. Gato asks, I'm trying to get into editing videos, creating more content. Do you have a video on what software you use, what your current build is, future upgrades, and possible sponsored video from your build? So about my computer specifically, I did do a build video when I built this most recent rig. I will link to that down below. It's not a sponsored video, but it does have a parts list. As far as software guides, the only one that I've done in my memory is an OBS guide, which is how I record my videos. I'm recording on OBS right now, so I have a beginner setup guide for that, but I've never done a tutorial for editing software, perhaps one day. I edit in Adobe Premiere Pro these days is the software that I use. And then Daniel asks, what is your opinion about how the game has aged? Do you think the game has gone downhill, or do you think the game still has a shred of light for the future? So I think that it's subjective. Like, whether or not a game goes downhill depends on whether or not you like the direction it's going. WoW has absolutely changed and evolved over time, and if you ask me, it kind of had to. The fact that it's changed and evolved is the reason I think why I've been able to continue to stay interested and engaged for over 10 years without really losing my love of it. If it had been exactly the same and they had just come out with new content but no new systems and no changes for all that time, I probably would have moved on by now. It's a different game than it has been, and in another 10 years it'll be a different game than it is now. Whether or not it's going downhill to you depends on what kind of things you value in the game and what kind of things the developers are prioritizing and how well those match up, and also how much you care about those things. Like, I am just as excited for the future of the game now as I have ever been, but I'm also very easy as far as pleasing in terms of WoW changes. The core things that I really love about the game are, they never really change, and all of like the class balance and the systems and the places we go and the things that we do, as long as I have like some stuff to collect and a raid to raid and some goals to work towards, all of the specifics of it never bothers me too much because it's in change. If there's a system I don't like, I can just live with it for a while because it's not going to ruin my life, and eventually they'll try something else and maybe I'll like that better. I'm rambling at this point, but basically what I'm trying to say, I think the game's going to be just fine. I think there's plenty of hope, and whether or not it continues to be for you is up to you. And that has been my week. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have a question you would like me to answer in a vlog, please leave it as a comment in the most recent one. Let me know what you think, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.